All right, guys. So we are here with the homie David Shelton. He was cool enough to come through, just so we can kind of give more of his thoughts and his perspective on his product, the Helix Performance sleeves. And I'm going to be incorporating this into the actual like full comparison knee sleeve video because you guys are going to see in that video I already talked about the fact that for me these are the best knee sleeves, like easily, it's not even close. And I'll in that portion of this whole video talk about why. But I just wanted to have David here because it's cool to actually be able to have one of the owners of the knee sleeves, to ask him questions on like what his thought process is, why he went in the direction that he did, just everything like that. So to start off, man, first of all, how long have you been working on these like in the background?
This company sort of it it kind of started just as a joke, honestly. Like we used to joke about how like a lot of sleeves were coming out and like they were all doing the same thing and we said, "Hey, maybe we could make something different and try something else," and this transpired about a year ago. So from a year till now, it's like things started, turning in my mind, like ideas started, transpiring. I started seeing more and more companies come out with them. I was like, okay, well, if now is the time to do it. Now's the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I sort of tried to essentially jump in line with all of these companies coming out with sleeves, and I wanted to simply do it different.
Yeah.
And so I've been lifting, for a really long time, been in, knee sleeves for just about as long as I can remember. And for me, like, I'm really particular about how the knee sleeves feel.
Yeah.
So originally, a company came out with stiff sleeves, Inzer came out, and I literally remember it was 2 weeks out from nationals, and I said, man, these aren't even out yet, but they're approved. Like, I need to get a pair of these because if they actually help, then I'm gonna go into nationals feeling really good.
Yeah.
Went in, and tried them on, and I was like, "What is going on? Like something wrong? Like they didn't work how I thought they were."
Yeah.
And I've been wearing SPDs since the beginning of time, just because that's what I'm used to, and that's what I enjoy the most. I have like the old quality SPDs, which I like a lot. Um, but I tried the Inzers; those were the first ones to come out. I felt like the best way to describe it was I felt like a bottoming out sensation when I was squatting. Since I was really particular, I swapped right back. So that's kind of how that all started, was because I started noticing that they were stiff, but they weren't really doing what I thought they were gonna do.
Hmm.
It's almost like something came out, and I was like, I know what they're trying to do. Like I know what they're trying to feel, but they're not doing it. Like so, all these things mixing in my mind. I start seeing some other designs coming out. I start seeing stiffer neoprene, just things like that. And I was like, man, I wonder what would happen if I just started, testing the waters, like prototyping things out. Like I said, I've been doing this for so long that I know kind of the aspects of the materials and the actual stitching, things like that, that actually matter in developing like how a sleeve is supposed to feel.
Yeah.
So long story short, went through a few prototypes. I knew what I was looking for. So it took about 3 or 4 different prototypes for me to say, okay, this is the one that I really like. Like it felt really good to wear, and I was like, I know this is the right one. So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then after that we produced it. It said, okay, we're gonna make a small run of them and see how people like them. We initially had a few prototypes. We just had people try them. I didn't have like nobody said anything negative about them. I was like, okay, so I think I started inclining and saying, okay, this is right. This is the right thing to do. So produced a limited run for the launch coming up soon, and that's sort of the plan, the short term plan. So
Yeah. Well, no, I remember for me, I can't remember, maybe it was like a couple months back when you let me try one of the prototypes. And what was crazy about it was I tried it with just the bar. Usually, like, I don't feel when I'm just taking the bar with knee sleeves, it's kind of like whatever. But the fact that I felt a difference with just the bar, I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of crazy. And those were actually like, those were an extra small, and I actually were a small than those. That was a size too
oh
small.
man,
and it's still, and that was very, very difficult to get on, which I'm gonna actually ask him a question about that here in a second. But the fact that despite it being like a size too small, that I felt the difference with just the bar. That's when I was like, oh, okay. And that's when I told him straight up, I was like, bro, if your finished product is anything like these prototypes, you're good. Because like I said, you guys know I've tried all these other sleeves. I've given my thoughts, the comparisons, and in a lot of ways, some of them are very closely comparable to the point where it's almost just a preference more than anything like concrete or super objective. But with these, it was like automatic, like night and day difference. And my next question was pretty much going to be that, David, as far as, in your opinion, is there a need to size down with these at all, or can you just go true
No.
to size?
So basically, I sized these like as similar as possible to like what I believe needs to be tight. So essentially, we have a sizing guide online that the measurements that it says are the measurements. Like that's going to be tight. And if say the measurement is 20 inches or something like that, and you go for the size that's like at 20, expect it to be like pretty tight, like pretty aggressively tight. And I actually believe that if you can't get them high enough, or that you have any trouble actually pulling the top part up, that you got the wrong size. So the way that these sleeves work is it's less on actual tension of like how whenever you're putting it on at the top, you feel that squeeze on your quads. Not actually like how they work. Like a lot of these other sleeves, that's kind of the idea. The idea is to feel really tight. But whenever you go down, it simply disappears,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Yeah.
like a ghost tension. It's like that's what I called it, a ghost tension. And so for with these sleeves, you should be able to relatively easily put them on and relatively easily take them off. So like almost no struggle. Like there's like I'll probably post a video eventually of me taking them off. It didn't even take me 2 seconds. Like I literally slid them right down. Where these sleeves actually do their work is when you go down, it actually compresses as you go down. So it actually helps you where you want it, which is in the hole.
Yeah,
Um,
and that has to do with like the stitching, right? Because
right.
that's one thing that I've noticed and talked about, and I'm going to talk about in the video too, is like the different styles of stitching and how that matters with where you feel the tension and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Because yeah, like you said, these are have not been difficult to get on or off at all. Like I'd say they're a little bit hard to get on than off, but in both cases, it's super easy. And yeah, that's the thing too that I've been telling people, because a lot of people with a lot of these newer knee sleeves, they keep asking me, "Oh, what size did you wear in this?" And then, "What size do you wear this?" And I keep telling everybody, it doesn't matter what I'm wearing. Be true to size. Take your measurements and be true to size. But it's interesting because a lot of these other companies, they literally will say like, "Oh, if you want like a looser feel, go with this," or if you want a slight tighter feel, then size down. To me, that almost makes it more confusing instead of just like, I want to just measure and know that that is the right size, right? And it sounds like you kind of accounted for that.
I've gotten a numerous amount of messages and just people asking me at the gym, things like that, like of what size they should get and things like that. And it's like the best thing to do is literally measure your leg. And if you receive them and it's hard around your quad, then you're probably on the wrong size. And we made the sizing guide, aggressive enough to where they shouldn't be like we gave some cushion in there so that you're not like squeezing them on.
Right.
And always remember, like another really big thing with these sleeves is say you have a gap at the bottom or say you have like a little bit of gapping, right? So these sleeves are stiff, and so what happens is you can't get everybody's leg the perfect size. Like you can't get it perfect. So sometimes there are gaps when say your quads are really big but your calves are really small. The gap at the bottom, yeah. The gap at the bottom actually it had a lot of reaction online initially with some of these other sleeves, but with these sleeves it doesn't take or it doesn't do anything. It's and so that's why this sleeve I think is going to be a game changer, because it actually doesn't matter how tight you get them. You don't need them to be tight anymore because the material itself does its job. And then the stitching, of course, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what I was gonna ask next. Was like, and I'll let you hold this so you can kind of walk through it. But what was your mindset with the stitching Because that's, to me, that's one of the biggest difference. Like, I know like a lot of these sleeves have the same material, but the biggest difference I noticed, like, the A7 has them on the side, Inzer, Village Nine just has it directly in the back.
Mhm.
But y'all's is it's like, and I know of course SPD has kind of almost like the spiral, but y'all's is a little bit different from that. And I believe you even got a patent on this stitching
Yep.
specifically, so people
Patented
can't.
it out.
Yeah,
Yep.
so kind of just take us through what the mindset is with the stitching and why it is what it is as far as that.
Yep. So conceptually, right, we have a stiff material, but whenever you put the sleeve on, it essentially stretches at the stitch, right? So that's the rule with all of these things, and that's the concept behind the stitching. And so essentially, with these other ones, you have a stitch that goes straight down the middle. So whenever you put it down or whenever you put it on, the forces going out perpendicular from the stitch, right? So that's just kind of a force rule, right? The stitch creates the force. So I said, okay, if a straight stitch is making me bottom out, like how do I make the force, how do I change the force, right? So since I wanted the most force at the bottom, I needed something that would essentially clamp down as I went down. So I mean, and it took time for me to do this. I didn't just analytically like come up with it, but
Right.
I realized that if I had a diagonal situation going, that I would get a diagonal force coming out of it this way, but then I put a stitch in the front to where everything it's the opposite of the back. So essentially we're getting a force that's going this way, but then it's crossing on the back. So it's fighting, the sleeve is actually fighting itself on the way down. And that's the feeling that you actually end up getting is at the bottom it feels like it's going to just like it feels really secure,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So that's actually how these work. The stitching is made to actually fight itself. And then you combine it with a stiff material, and that's whenever you get the material actually doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because the biggest thing about a lot of these other sleeves is they have really stiff material, but it's not being utilized, if that
Properly.
makes any sense. So I just said, okay, let's utilize it some and like actually get something out of them. And it's funny because these are neoprene sleeves. Like we're not supposed to be creating knee wraps or like any sort of equipped situation, but I definitely feel a lot more secure at the bottom in these than I have any other sleeve I've ever felt. Trying my best not to be biased, but
Yeah.
I'm very particular about my sleeves. Like anybody that knows me knows that I don't just try like other things. And it's
Yeah.
like whenever I went to develop this, I I tried pretty hard to like get it right. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why I was excited when you said you were making one, because, like, obviously, this is his products. Like I say, he's trying to be biased, but he's not paying me to do this. I asked him to come down and if he would mind taking the time to be on the channel and kind of talk about this, just so because I didn't want to speak for him. Like, you guys are gonna like, so you guys are gonna hear my thoughts over like what I think is good about the sleeves and stuff like that. But a lot of what he's saying are things that I was planning to address in regards to like the stitching, that feeling of the bottoming out. And like I said, like the way, and it's not just me, a lot of people, like I know John, a lot of people describe it as almost like taking the best aspects of like the old SPD sleeves, combining it with these stiffer sleeves, and then getting this really cool balance. And like you said, even like the stitching and the almost like the bunching you get right at the bottom where you want it to happen. That's been really, really cool and really, really useful. And like I said, I immediately felt the difference. And when, with the prototype and then with these, like I said, it's not even close. And what I did is like whenever I compare something, I don't just use it like, oh, this feels better. I go back and forth. And as I've gone back and forth, it's like, yeah, I feel, especially in the hole, that's where I feel the biggest difference, especially with, being a wider squatter. I know you're a wider stance squatter as well. But what's been cool to see is that seeing people with close stance, wider stance, somewhere in between, it seemed like they're all kind of getting the same benefit out of it. So and that's pretty much my last question, is this a sleeve that you think will work kind of regardless of what type of stance or style squatter you are? Because that's one thing that I was telling people, like the Titans, I think for someone like Christian, for example,
Yep.
they're so stiff, but they work well because Christian has such a wide stance. And he literally almost with the way he squats when he forced himself into the hole anyway. But because of his range of motion, how long his legs are, I feel like he still gets pretty good tension right at the bottom compared to somebody else who's shorter or maybe their range of motion is not quite that. They don't quite get that same tension. So would you say these are going to be pretty good for anybody regardless of squat style and stance?
Yeah, I mean, so sleeves are always at the end of the day going to be a preference thing. So, like, say you try all these other sleeves, say you try mine, and you still can't find one. It's like, okay, well, I guess you're the next person to make a pair, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, when it comes down to it, like these sleeves that are really stiff that have the straight stitch in the back, like I actually recommend them for people that their knees either travel really forward or they really like kind of almost dive bombing their squat because you're essentially pulling the material apart really quickly. And then a stiffer material, regardless of how the stitching is essentially going to pull itself really hard at the bottom. And if you're going down fast enough, you can get something out of it. The reason why these tend to be good for everybody is because, I mean, one, not everybody dive bombs their squat. That, or I would say, not very many people. I would say,
Yeah.
at this point,
Yeah.
yeah. But essentially, I'm a wide squatter, and one thing that wide squatters have to have is tension. And so the buildup actually at the bottom is that feeling in your hips whenever you squat wide is essentially what you're searching for in your knees as well. So whenever you have a sleeve that's stiff, but then you get down to the bottom, you're searching for tension. And then whenever you don't have it, it comes out wrong. So essentially, like, you know, it's still preference, but as far as it goes, like I could see this sleeve working for all crowds because of the fact that it plays on all sides. Wide squatting is actually the nuanced part of all of this because not very many people squat wide, and most people that squat wide, they actually prefer the softer sleeves because it helps them to get compression. They feel the tension and compression at the bottom, and that's good enough for them. They don't care if there's bounce or not. I want tension, you know? So whenever I got into these and realized that they were also good for a wide squatter, I was like, I think I'm good because the wide squatting is the nuanced portion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, no, that's awesome, man. That was pretty much it as far as my questions. Not gonna necessarily make you reveal all the secrets and details behind it, but appreciate you coming on and taking the time to kind of explain the product. Like I said, guys, this is David Shelton, one of the owners of Progressive Overload Dallas. I'll have his Instagram, the Helix Performance knee sleeve Instagram, as well as his gym Instagram, all on screen. With that being said, I'm gonna let you guys get back to the rest of the knee sleeve review video.